First of all, thanks for coming on and doing this with me. This is awesome. I think from what you've told me, you have a pretty interesting background. Um, and I think we can start off with that. So if you want to get into your background, your story, your journey, a little bit, whatever you want to tell the world about yourself, and then we can get the ball rolling.
Perfect. Yeah. So I've been trying to think about how to like condense this in like a small synopsis. But so basically I was born and raised in San Diego, and I went to Cal Poly for my undergrad, and then I moved to Tennessee for my graduate degree. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, both in the states of Tennessee and California. And I think, so right now I'm currently living in Germany. I'm working for the military as a civilian contractor. So I'm a therapist for them. And I've had this job for, 4 years now, which seems crazy. Before that, I was working with the addiction population. And both of these jobs have been extremely eye-opening, huge learning curves, and just really good insight into these different cultures. So basically, I've been studying independently psychedelic assisted therapy for, I guess, more like 7 years now, 8 years now. So it's been a long, long time. And it's just interesting, like how it all happened. It was very organic. I didn't, when I entered graduate school very young. I was 22 when I entered graduate school, and nothing was nothing with psychedelics was on my mind. At that point, I was actually like a full-blown atheist. My spiritual journey has been very, very interesting and quite a journey. So I didn't have any idea that I would be doing what I'm doing now, which is becoming a psychedelic therapist. So I would say in 2013, it was when I was getting my graduate degree in Nashville. That was the first time that I ever tried psychedelics. And it was with someone who I trusted. It was my boyfriend at the time. We were together for about 6 years, and we did it 2 times. So he was in Nashville for a little bit, and basically that was the opening of my spiritual brain. Although I had been studying religion since I was 17 or so. I think in high school was when I started questioning religion. I was born and raised, or I was raised as Protestant, so I was like, oh, okay, this is who I am, right? This is what I'm supposed to be because my parents believe in it. But I think in high school is when I started questioning it. But the spirituality aspect I feel like that didn't really come in until psychedelics came into my life. Mm-hmm. And so in 2013 was the first time I tried. It was psilocybin mushrooms, was the first 2 times. And it just was so eye-opening, so impactful. I think everyone who's experienced these medicines have the same kind of idea the first time. It's like, wow, you feel so connected. Like I felt so blissful. It was such a spiritual experience. And it really brought me out of like my analytical, scientific, like research brain. I was like, oh, like this is okay. Maybe God does exist, and maybe it's not this white guy in the clouds type of thing, and it's something else. And we were kind of misinterpreting the Bible. And I think what was so fundamental for me with doing psilocybin mushrooms with that person in particular, it was the second time I did it, because we did it once, and then like 2 weeks later we did it again. And the second time was, I like looking back at it now, I was like, wow, that actually changed, like that fundamentally changed the course of my career and personal life. And it wasn't because something I experienced with the psychedelics, it was me observing what happened with him. Oh. And yes, because my deepest experience with psychedelics happened last year in 2020. But this one, all the way back in 2013, it was like absolutely mind-blowing because of what I experienced with him, or what I observed happen within him. So to give like a quick rundown of that, and he said it's okay if I talk about this, but I won't go into too much detail because it's just a long story.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, so like I said, we were together for a long time. We were together for about 6 years at that point, and 2 years prior to that, his mother passed away, and there was an aspect of her passing that was really, really traumatic for him. And so fast forward 2 years, we're, under the psychedelic trip, and I remember we were just not doing anything. I think I was just laying on the ground and like looking up at the ceiling and like looking at the fractals, on the kaleidoscope of what I was seeing with the colors and stuff. And he just started talking about the day that she passed away, and he started talking about this specific aspect of the trauma of her death. And I remember just like experiencing my whole body just light up in this incredible curiosity, because I was like, what? Like, he's talking about this? And even in that moment, he was like, this is the first time I've been able to talk about this since it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really was fundamentally just life-changing for me, because he was like an emotional wall, kind of like, not, I don't want to say the typical guy, but just very emotionally closed off. And, he wasn't really good at talking about his emotions. And so seeing him open up like a flower and just talk about that specific thing so clearly, so calmly, and so openly was just, I was like, okay, like there's something here, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
this is, I just didn't expect it. And I think from that day forward, any book I could read, any article I could grab my hands on, and this is back in 2013. So we've got a long way since then. So I guess, yeah, I've been studying psychedelics since 2013. So any book I could read, any article I could find, any people who were doing podcasts at that time about it, anyone who was willing to have an open conversation about it, I would grab onto that and run with it. And I would, I was telling trusted friends, because, I was in graduate school and I was becoming a licensed, mental health professional. And I was living in the Bible Belt, I was living in Tennessee. And that's just that's not something you broadcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had to be very strategic with who I was open with. And so people would send me books, they would send me articles. And so it just kind of organically grew from there. And at that point, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to become a psychedelic therapist. It was just like, oh, what is this? Like, what are these medicines? What are these plants? Like, I just went through, or I just witnessed a tremendous, just healing process that was just so unplanned and spontaneous. And so I just kind of, it just organically went from there. I just followed my curiosity and I followed my intuition, and I love to study. I love to research. So, this has been an independent research for a long time, and it just blossomed from there. So I'm about to be, let's see. So it's 2021. So I'm in Germany right now, and I'm moving back to San Diego, where I'm from. And so I've been doing, so in terms of I'm sure you're aware of the umbrella of psychedelics and what's like legalized and what's not. So the only one that's federally legalized is ketamine. So shout out to Polaris Insight Center. I've been doing trainings with them to provide ketamine assisted psychotherapy. So I've done 2 levels. I'm doing level 3 and level 4 in a few weeks later this month. And so when I open up my private practice in July of this year, I'll be able to provide psychedelic assisted therapy starting with ketamine.
Wow.
And yeah, so it like dawned on me a few weeks ago. I was like, wait, I was like, that's actually coming to fruition. I was like, I'm there, because I've been studying this for so long. I was like, whoa, like I can't believe I'm there already.
Manifestation.
Yes, exactly. And I've been manifesting it for quite some time. And then I want to get certified to do MDMA, psychedelic assisted therapy. So I'm going to apply for that program later this fall, and then hopefully get into it, because that would be training for 2022. So they're looking to, and that's through MAPS. And MAPS, they're the ones who are pushing to have MDMA legalized for therapeutic purposes, hopefully by 2022. I think COVID is kind of, it's just a whole process, but it's been so successful. It's been, I think about, if my memory serves me right, it's an 85% success rate with PTSD symptoms.
Wow.
And it's just wildly successful. And everyone who's been following this and knows about psychedelics, we're like, yeah, that's expected. Like, yes, that makes sense to me, those statistics. So I'm hoping to therefore get certified through MAPS for specifically MDMA, and then start providing that in 2022. And it's just exciting. I get a lot of, because I'm on, the ether, I have a few profiles, therapy profiles online. And so one of them, which people can, this is another resource for people, it's Psychedelic Support Network. It's a platform for clinicians and providers like myself who are interested in this, who are knowledgeable. And so I've gotten a lot of inquiries from that website, and a lot of them are veterans and men who have really bad PTSD, and they're like, I just, nothing has helped. I've done everything, and this is like my last resort. I don't know what to do. And so I kind of have to put them in certain directions, because all of them are illegal still, except for ketamine. And even then, if you're in like, Montana, I don't think it's available in Montana, but if you're in California, I know where to send you. So that's been interesting, seeing the inquiries from there. So I guess that's a short and long kind of rundown with where I'm at, the future of where I'm going, and kind of how I've stumbled upon it, because this was so not planned. Like, if you would have, I'm 31 now, if you would have told me at like 18 years old, like, this is what you'll be doing, I would have been like, you're crazy. Like, there's no way. Like, there's no way. So it's been an exciting thing to just literally just follow my curiosity, follow what I feel is right. Because this is still, I'm so in that world where it's so normalized for me, but I'm very aware that it's still a taboo subject.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, unfortunately. But, I think the trend, if you will, is I feel like it's definitely picking up steam.
100%.
Yes, like really, really in the past, I would say, especially in the past few years. And so it's an exciting time, and the legalization of MDMA, I think after that it'll be kind of a snowball effect with the rest of them coming out. Psilocybin, LSD, ayahuasca is a little bit trickier, and I know that peyote, there's a lot of indigenous people who do not want peyote to be used for, by us, because there's a and that's a whole different story in itself, which I totally respect, them not wanting us to use peyote. But nonetheless, MDMA, LSD, and psilocybin, there's big futures there, and we obviously are at some type of spiritual reckoning. I think they're coming at a time where we desperately need a change. So like you and I, like between our emails, we're like, yes, like I think we're on the cusp of like a spiritual, revolution. Yes. Yes. And I think it's like, I'm so spiritual now. Like I feel like I live and breathe in spirit. And it took me a while to get that way, but I'm seeing like 2020 was such a Oh man, such a revealing year, where
Mm.
it just exposed America, and I'll just, centralize this on the USA since we're both American. It just really exposed our systems, our disease, the disease system, and how we just are not that sophisticated. We do not take care of our citizens, and I think we're at a place where, because I work right now, so I work with the military, but I work specifically with the children of the active duty.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so sometimes I see adults in active duty, but I focus with dealing with or working with the students. So I'm working with Gen Z, and you know, like I said, I'm only 31, and I'm not that far in age. And so I started working with them when I was 27, and that was only 10 years removed from high school from when I was there. And so it was only 10 years from my high school experience, and then I was experiencing their high school life. And it's just completely different. And, you know, there's just never been a generation that's been so sad, so
Mm.
anxious. The suicidal ideation is through the roof. They are incredibly depressed. There's a lot of apathy. Um, and it's because they're just seeing us, they're seeing adults, and they're like, what are you doing?
Oh man.
What, like, the world is crumbling, the economic disparities between the haves and the have-nots is just getting worse and worse. And
It's like
they're
no
like,
hope.
yeah, and they're like, college is out of my grasp, it's just too expensive, what do I do? So I feel like this spiritual, like, revolution, like we said, it's like kind of coming at the exact time when we need it the most, where we need saving.
Yeah.
The way that we're living in America, in the Western world really, but specifically America, is just not working. It just is fundamentally unsustainable on a lot of levels. And I feel like our generation, the young generation, sees that, and they're embodying that in a way in their like depression and suicidal ideation and anxiousness. Um, and so I feel like it's a very spiritual reason to me, like the timing of it all, you know. Um,
It's meant to be. That's how it's kind of, it's not an accident.
exactly.
It's kind of like the basis of all spirituality. It's like you reach a certain point where we just suffer so much and see so much despair in the world that you have no other way to live than to turn to the spiritual aspect of life, which is really, how would you define what spiritual means to you?
Oh, good question. I would say, spirituality to me means that you have, for one, I think, a really deep connection with your inner self. And then you have a very deep connection with, or just a perspective where you have respect for everything. And I mean everything, because we're all connected, truly. Everything and every animal and everything, we all affect each other. And I also think that spirituality and living and being spiritual is you're really living out of love. Like, you walk in love, you are leading with your heart. And I would say that that's how I would define it. How would you define it?
Very similarly, I would say it's recognizing an aspect in myself that myself is bigger than my body. Myself that I thought it to be is actually not just confined to this body. It's like you said, everything. All is one and one is all. And
Mhm.
because of that tenet that I know that we're all connected, everything is connected, energetically connected, atomically connected, biologically. There's just whatever way you want to look at it, because we're all connected, yes, from that, I have to act out of love, because if I am everything in one way or the other, then I have to love myself. I can't, like, if I punch somebody in the face, then that's like punching myself in the face. So from just very simply, putting it very simply, it's recognizing that I'm greater than just the paradigm that I thought. My aperture was this small. I thought the world was this big, but through my practices, I realized that the world is this big. It's a lot bigger than I thought. And I'm not in the world. I am of the world. I am of this world. And like I said, from that, you just it's kind of like a feeling of salvation in a way. It's a feeling of knowing that, oh, the suffering meat suit, it's not actually me. It's kind of just like I'm just part of the process. I'm just like just like an instrument, just like a messenger in a way, just kind of a servant, I guess you could say. I'm just serving this process that I'm caught in. And if I continue to identify with my mind, my thoughts, the servant, then that's where suffering leads. But if I identify as the whole process, simply experiencing me right now subjectively for a very, very short amount of time, that means so much more than just my little life that I've seemed to have built up over the years. And yeah, I don't know, that just gives me a sense of peace ultimately.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah, I totally, absolutely align with that. I think, I forget where I heard this, but I heard or read this somewhere where, and this is what I truly believe, is that I believe that we're spiritual beings having a human experience versus humans who sometimes have spiritual experiences. So I think at our core, we are spirit, and that goes into like the scientific fact that we don't know what consciousness is, right? We have no idea where it is, what it is, we don't even know if it's in our brains or not. Like, we have no idea like where consciousness comes from. And I think that really ties into like this spirit that we are. And when you have, it's just my favorite thing to read and study because it's so inspiring, and like the feeling it gives in my body, it's just like, wow, like we're not alone, and we're so connected, and all of us have such a purpose. And I feel like since becoming spiritual, because I definitely I identify as agnostic now. I have been for a few years now. I just feel like there's such an abundance of gratitude, like constantly flowing within me. And I think that's because I just am so spiritual, and I just feel so much gratitude. And walking in love and kind of leading with my heart is a very like it's a magnet. Like, people are really drawn to people who kind of walk that way, right? So it's just life changing. I think, like, when you start leading your life in a spiritual way, your internal world completely transforms, and therefore your external world completely transforms.
Exactly.
And yes. And so that's a huge component into my therapy, where I think spirituality is our biggest tool, and our inner world is our biggest tool in helping you, guiding you to get to your inner spirit, connecting you with self. And psychedelics is just a surefire way to get there. Talk therapy does work, absolutely. It's just some people are struggling so much with their mental health that they really do need an efficient, quick way to connect to spirit, and that's through psychedelics.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's just like in the correct setting, it's a surefire way to connect with the divine, connect with the mystical elements of our universe. When if you didn't have these substances that are from the earth, they're organic, they're it's like, you know, you don't have to do anything, you literally just pick it and eat it. If
Right.
if they if we didn't have those, hypothetically, and we had to access the divine, it takes time to build that up. Like, you have to have a practice, you have to have discipline, and, you know, it just comes down to simple meditation essentially. But it's not like you eat some psilocybin mushrooms and you go on a 4 to 6 hour trip, and during that 4 to 6 hours you dissolve boundaries that you weren't able to before, you confront demons that you weren't able to or didn't even know existed in your mind, you kind of touch upon different emotions that you didn't even know you were feeling, and then open yourself and embrace everything that you are, right? In that 4 to 6 hours, the time that would take to do, you know, on the regularly without those, it's possible, 100% possible, but it takes a lot of discipline. So that's why these psychedelic substances are so important to me. It's because I recognize that we urgently need it now. Like you said, like right now, we need these things right now. And there's a reason why they're all coming into popularity right now. It's not an accident, like I said.
Right.
So I don't know. It's like it pains me to see that we live in a world where there's so many millions of people that need these things right now and just don't have the access to it. It's blasphemy. It really is. It's like, what these things can help us just be happy. Essentially, it can help us just live a better life. Just see the light, you know. It's just so much hope and optimism that these things potentially can give somebody. And we live in a world that is just still under the facade of the drug war. It's embarrassing. It is. If I was a young kid right now, like you said, I would be like, what are these people like? They created such a backwards world for me to live in. So it's understandable that these kids are depressed. I totally get it, because if I was 16, 17, 18, becoming an adult right now, I'd be like, I am totally effed. This world is so crazy. But I think there is hope, and that lies in us touching upon what we just talked about, the spiritual aspect, going within ourselves and seeing what we really are. Because if you're growing up in a world that tells you you're this, you have to do this, this is your job when you get older, you're your social group, or pretty much what I'm saying is none of this aspect of what we're talking about in this conversation is spoken about at all for generation. Is it Z? You said Generation Z? Yeah, none of this is like, we need to incorporate this into our society in a safe and responsible way and show people that these things are for us, they're medicines. And from there, I ultimately believe it'll create a better world. Like, these things aren't going to do any harm. People aren't going to be jumping out windows or, you know, like running naked on the streets or something. Like, these are legit medicines that we have to recognize. And that's why I brought you on here, because you are a legit practitioner in this. So yeah, I just went off on a little tangent right there. But I want to transition into asking you, what is it about these substances that kind of, for you at least, what was it that kind of like led you down the path? Like, what did it show you that allowed you to open up to that other spiritual aspect of yourself?
Let's see. Like, so you're asking what I experienced with them and how.
Yeah, because you said you changed from mushrooms, from seeing your boyfriend, and also something that happened to you last year. So what was it? What was it with your boyfriend that you saw? You said he confronted emotions, right?
Yes.
Is that what happened with you as well? Like, did it open up? Like, Terrence McKenna says, they dissolve boundaries. The psychedelic dissolve boundaries. Is that what happened to you? Because that's what happened with me. It kind of like dissolved the boundary between my materialist mind of just the American dream, the default mode network, and it dissolved that boundary. I opened the door, and I pretty much never closed it since then. And the same thing, I was also very ungodly. There was no spiritual aspect in me. I was just kind of like, logic, 1 + 1 = 2. If there's no study for it, it doesn't exist. And this kind of showed me, I was like, wait, we don't know anything. There's so much more going on. Is that what happened with you?
That's like exactly what happened to me. So I can talk about both points. So the first time, and I like talking about those 2 times with my boyfriend at the time back in 2013. So the first time, yes, it just completely dissolved my physical realm, and it completely changed my concept of time. And like you said, like it opened this door in me that will never be shut. I mean, I will never ever be the same, and I'm happy about that. Like it was so necessary and so needed, and I'm so thankful that we had the curiosity and the open-mindedness, like, hey, let's do this, because we were going through 2013 was one of the most difficult years of my life. And so doing that at that time, it completely shifted. I think it just changed kind of everything, like it changed because I had already been questioning and researching religion. And so it completely switched my brain to like, okay, spirituality and not this religion dogma, like let's read more about spirituality. And it changed my perception of time. Like I said, it made me feel so deeply connected to life. And I just felt like, I feel like it really provided me this like incredibly deep happiness and gratitude that has just been like oozing out of me ever since. Like it's like this opened this door of like, wow, like life is so beautiful. And I'm talking all of it with the trauma, with the stress, with the trials and tribulations. Like those are spiritual events, and those have meaning, and that is part of the beauty. Like those are actually, it just changes my whole perspective and approach to my trials and difficulties and things. I'm like, oh, like those were really necessary. And it helped me kind of look at it that way. So with him specifically, that was my first time where it completely dissolved my physical being, changed how I thought about life, how I think from then on, I was like, okay, like I am spiritual, I am spirit, and that's just undeniable at that point. And so it changed my relationship with myself, changed my relationship with just everything else, really. And then the 2 weeks later, when we did it a second time, that was the moment, that was the event where he had his whole like blossoming of opening up about the traumatic event. And so it was in that experience where I experienced the same thing, like the dissolving of the self, dissolving of the ego, just pure bliss, so much gratitude, so much appreciation for everything. Like I love the effect it has when you just love everything for what it is, no judgment, just an abundance of compassion. And so I had that experience again, and then doubling it with my observations of him. Because like I said, I was in graduate school at this time. So I was very deep into my studies of therapy. And so I was in my observant brain. And so having him open up about the specific aspect of the death of his mother, while we were under that psychedelic journey, it was just like, okay, I didn't say anything. I wasn't like, oh, let's talk about this. Like he brought it up. And I, like, if you like knowing him so well, I knew that was absolutely revolutionary. The fact that he just voluntarily talked about it and talked about it so calmly. And, I just sat there, I remember I turned my body to face him so that he knew that he was getting 100% of my attention. And I was just like, I think my jaw just like dropped to the floor because I was like, what is happening? Like, I cannot believe I am experiencing this with him, where he's able to be just removed from himself just enough where he can look at his life in in just an objective way where he can look at it really concisely and really, really compassionately. And so we processed that trauma together. And so fast forward to my most spirit, because I had done it, I had done LSD after that, and a few more times with psilocybin. But so that was a super life-changing moment because of what I experienced with him. And of course, like I said, it changed my life too. But I think my most revolutionary experience was with LSD, and it was in May of 2020. Oh man. It was, so yeah, less than a year ago. And oh my gosh, it was such an inner body experience. It was like a 11, 12-hour journey, and it just, we took the tabs, and it was like I was just zoomed so far inwards in my body that I felt like I was out of my body. And like not like an oxymoron, but I was like so far in my body. I was like having like an out of body experience. I remember I could not open my eyes for hours. They were like glued shut because I was just so inward, and it was extremely emotional the first few hours. And I learned, so that experience specifically was my most spiritual one because of how many like messages I got. I was going through, I mean, who didn't go through a tumultuous year of 2020, right? So I was going through a very difficult time just of not knowing what to do next, where, I was living in Nashville, and I had just spent 4 months in 2019 living in England, which was an incredible experience. And then I was supposed to be going to Spain to work in Spain for a few months as a therapist for the military, but that fell through because of COVID. So I was like, what do I do now? And I was like, okay, at that point, I was 30. And so I was like, does 30 look like this? Like, I feel so unsettled and ungrounded. And I was like, gosh, I thought by 30 that you should like be where you're supposed to be, right? And at that point, I'd been living in Nashville for 8 years. And I really, it had been my goal all along to open up a private practice. But I was like, should I do that in Nashville? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm an alien out here. Like, being a California girl and then moving to the South in 2012, I just always felt like an alien. Like I was just, it took me a long time to find like-minded people there, and I did. And my most favorite people are just, I love Nashville, but I just could not fully be immersed in the culture because it was just so unaligned with me fundamentally. And so I was like, I was like, okay, I feel emotionally and professionally ready to enter that next step into a private practice. Like, where should I go? Should I move to LA? Like, I have 2 best friends in LA. Should I move back home to San Diego? My family's there, and I was dating someone at the time where I was like, maybe I shouldn't be with anyone. And so I was just dealing with really big life questions of what to do next. And so the LSD trip was so useful, where it just gave me answers. It was so interesting. It was like, okay, you need to be alone. Like, you don't need to be in a relationship. You are done with Nashville. You're done with Tennessee. Like, you don't need to be there. I felt like, and these were all, it wasn't like someone talking to me. It was like this body felt sense while I was under LSD.
Like intuitional in a way.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like a physical feeling in my heart, I would say, like my chest area, where I was sensing, okay, like I shouldn't be with anyone. I need to focus on myself and not these relationships. I need to move away from Nashville, and I need to enter my next chapter of a private practice in California. I then, was trying to find through my employer. I was like, I really want another experience overseas again. Hence why I'm here now. So, and it taught me how much grief is stored in my body and how much grief I still need to process. And it just blew my mind away, where I was like, gosh, like this was so revealing. And no one could do that for me, right? Like, even if I'm a client, because I have been a client, you know, where I've had a therapist, of course, all therapists have therapists, you know, we're humans too.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, gosh, like, you know, I could have had the most seasoned, trained, top-notch therapist, and there's no way that they could have, especially in one day, like 12 hours, there's no way I could have gotten that much clarity, you know, like inner clarity, if it was like just traditional talk therapy, which I'm not trying to go against talk therapy. Obviously that's needed and it's helpful, and a lot of people just need that, and that's fantastic. But experiencing, you know, I was going through so much turmoil and so much just what ifs. I don't know what I'm, you know, I don't know where I'm going to go, like what's happening. And just the clarity it gave me was life changing. I mean, I was like, okay, you know, the next day I journaled it, and I've been journaling it since then, because some things like remind me of that experience. And so I wrote down like all of what came to me. And so talk about manifestation. And so I wrote it all down. And then through that, I just kind of followed. Okay. And I think the biggest lesson was focus on yourself. Like, as long as you focus on yourself, things will just fall into place. The right people will come into your life and therefore stay in your life. And you're going to do very impactful things, but you have to have yourself as a priority. And obviously you don't know my full story, but having that as a revelation makes a lot of sense, because I was constantly focusing on my relationships, and so completely having that different focus where I'm focusing internally on myself and my endeavors in my professional life, because thankfully, you know, I have a job that really is needed and it's necessary and it's beautiful and it's so fulfilling, and it is my purpose. You know, I'm really blessed where I just fundamentally get so much out of my job. And so focusing on my career is very important. And it is a selfless act in terms of the broader society. And so since May of 2020, I've been really practicing that clarity and that revelation of, okay, like focus on yourself. And less than a year later, my life has already, I mean, talk about growth, just propelling forward in so many ways and what I want to do. And things are just organically just falling into place like a little puzzle piece. And it was because of that day where we decided to do LSD, and it just provided so much guidance for me that only I could do with myself, or only I could do with the spirit within me, right?
Yep.
And so I was just like, so I love, you know, I like doing psychedelics when I'm going through a very tumultuous time, because I approach it that way. Like, okay, I need like a very deep spiritual experience to lead me the way and give me something to work with here. You know, like I'm at a loss with my own brain at this point. So I prefer doing them when I'm asking big questions and going through a transformational time. They help me with that. And it just was epic. And I'm just thankful. I'm thankful that which I wanted to touch on what you said earlier, which is the set and setting.
Yes.
Very important. You know, you can't just willy-nilly do it with whoever, wherever. No, you have to have a set and setting, and set meaning mindset, and setting is your physical realm. So who you're with, where you're at, what room you're in, what are you smelling, right? And so I'm thankful to have a set and setting I've always had a set and setting, you know, that's been very conducive of having a beautiful experience.
Mm.
So each time I experience these medicines, it just like doubled down, or it just really convinces me even more, like, yeah, and I think I can't help but laugh at ourselves because we're silly, like Americans, like we're silly. Like these have been here for
Hmm.
so long. And who are we, like, oh, well, we have to put these through all this research and scientific and do all of our Western things, right? When it's
Yeah.
like, this has been proven. This has
Yeah.
been proven from thousands and thousands of years from other cultures. And I just think that we're so silly to be like, oh, well, let's double check.
Hmm. It
Maybe they
is.
are good, and I'm just like, so I just that always, like, that piece always comes to my brain when I'm like, we're so egotistical to think that we have to check it, right? Like we have to, like,
Mm.
make sure that this is legitimate. It's like, it is legitimate.
Yeah.
Um, there was a whole nation, a whole population here in America, or there, because I'm in Germany, but here in America, who utilized these plant medicines, and they were doing just fine before we came along. They were doing just fine.
Yep.
And
Damn
so
white
it's,
people.
yeah, I know, right? Ruin everything. Colonization has been so toxic. Just talk about the worst thing that's happened to Earth, one of them at least. And so, yeah, I think that I'm happy to see that the Western world is finally coming to its senses, but it's like the way it's how long it's taken, and the way it's happening, it's very egotistical in my perspective. And it's just like, we're so silly. Like we're like, we must look ridiculous to indigenous people, and people in Guatemala and in Peru and all of the and Native Americans, and they're all like, you guys are like, we've been doing this.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's ridiculous.
It really is, because these things have been with us, like you said, for thousands of years. They're literally like our allies, and we don't have that aspect in our life. Like that's what we're missing. Is in American society is the aspect of spiritualism. And it's
Yes.
not even necessarily spiritual with the crystals and yoga poses. It's just kind of the aspect of more than just like I said before, the American dream, the default mode network, that the paradigm that we have been sold from the 20th century. It's just so backwards. It's so like disconnected. It's just messed up. It's not. We just essentially lost connection with the earth and nature, and we need to like touch upon that, because nature is itself a messenger. It's a way to communicate and kind of get answers in a way. Like it's like there's some kind of like energy transfer, whether it's like you're actually literally taking these things and ingesting them in your body, or you're out in the woods and just having a nice hike. We just, as Americans, we live in these concrete jungles. We're just disconnected from that aspect of us, but we are nature. We can't leave that part of us out. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like, I think what these indigenous peoples and Native Americans are more in touch with. It's the aspect of the earth. They're more in touch with the guy in mind, when we are just like, nope, money, 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 job. It's just like, just disconnected. Like the paradigm of the Western world, America, is just, you could have somebody live their entire life and not go for a walk in the woods or go for a hike or do something outside. It's craziness. Like you could literally not ever be in touch with the outside world, especially nowadays. And it's a sickness. There's something about just being in nature or ingesting nature and all of these herbal medicines, not even psychedelic, like all these, teas and anything. It's just like, it's part of us. It's literally a part of our being that we're just neglecting. But we are at a time where we're slowly introducing it into the American society. It is happening. But it's like I said, it's a slow process. I don't know if it's happening as quick as it needs to be. But,
Right.
work from yours and in this podcast and people all over the world doing stuff like that. That's just like that's just proof that the world is changing, and maybe this talk will change somebody to pursue whatever it is in psychedelics, or the whole spiritual aspect of life, and then from there it's a snowball effect. That I think it's like an exponential effect of people realizing who they are right now. That's the point we're at, and it's kind of just like slowly, like the curve is like this, but eventually we're going to reach a point where it's just like the point of no return. Like we go back to our roots, and kind of get more in touch with the earth, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like how you talked about like capitalism and consumerism, because, you know, it's absolutely no coincidence, especially working with the addiction population for a few years. It was just so no coincidence that all of the drugs that are mind numbing, disconnecting us to spirit, so alcohol, cigarettes, heroin, like the ADD pills, methamphetamine, those are normalized, socialized, legal. They're totally fine. The ones who crack us open and connect us to self and spirit, psilocybin, marijuana, LSD, ayahuasca, peyote, ibogaine, all those are and have been demonized, like
Yeah.
not illegal, but absolutely demonized. And it's no coincidence, like America, from colonization was built and structured in a way where they don't want us connected to spirit. They only want us to be consuming, eating, shopping, buying, capitalism, where it's me versus you. There's no type of cooperation. There's no type of community cohesiveness going on. So America, since colonization has been designed that way, where it was deliberately done, where, okay, we're disconnecting you from earth, from nature, from spirit, and we're going to make you kind of like robotic in a way, or like sheep in a way, right? Where it's
Just
like,
cogs.
yeah. And so we're kind of penetrating the system now. And so we're going through a paradigm shift, and we're going to see, who knows, we're going to see a lot in our lifetime. And, because when you are connected to spirit, when you have these incredibly, incredibly deep spiritual experiences, your behaviors change, right? Like you don't, like I've had a lot of people who stopped eating meat after they did LSD. They're like, oh my gosh, like I can never eat meat again, because they see animals in such a different way. Or, they're like, oh my gosh, like why am I buying a designer bag? Like, why am I buying this stupid Rolex watch? Like, well, why am I buying that? Why am I purchasing these stupid things that literally have no meaning, but I've been told that it does. And I've been told that that matters. But in reality, it doesn't at all.
Yeah.
And so we're like kind of at this reckoning where we need spirit, obviously. Like, so I talked about Gen Z and how they're struggling, but we are struggling as adults. Like, we're anxious, we're depressed, especially millennials. We're like, what is this? Like, we're all in debt. We're trying so hard to just live. We shouldn't all have 3 jobs just to make our bills. And why is there so much crap in our food, and why is our water tainted, and just so many levels of things. And we're at this reckoning. We're like, okay, like clearly the way that America has been designed does not work. It just doesn't work. But I feel like you cannot have a capitalistic consumer society who's also super spiritual, right? So those don't align, like they don't overlap. So we're at this really interesting juncture where it's like, we're going to either totally split, or who knows? So I've been actually pretty shocked that, the FDA has been approving the MDMA assisted therapy trial so quickly. Like I've actually really been shocked, because I know a lot about the FDA, right? They're the ones who approve all of the psychiatric drugs that I have to be aware of and know of. And so I've been rather surprised at how how much of a green light it's been getting in terms of just the history of the FDA. But I'm not surprised in terms of what the actual trials are showing. Obviously, like I said earlier, they've been brilliant. Like the outcomes have been fantastic in terms of showing the actual statistics to how well MDMA has been working. So I have hope. I really do have hope. We're just at a reckoning. We're at a juncture where it's going to be very interesting to see where we go from here. And there's a lot of pioneers who are paving the way for people like me, paving the way for people like you to have this podcast. And, like you said, all these count. Like every single one of these things matter. Like having these conversations, having a platform to just talk about it openly, me researching and opening up my private practice to start administering ketamine and hopefully soon enough MDMA. It's a collective effort. And I think that we all, want this, right? Like I think a lot of us understand, okay, yeah, like we live in concrete jungles. That's not conducive to being just at peace or, being content and just being okay. I don't like saying being happy because the goal is not to be happy. Being happy is, happiness is a fleeting emotion, just like anything else. The goal is to be content and to be at peace.
Yes.
And the way that we currently live with, our phones and our faces and TVs everywhere and just the processed food that we have and everything, and people don't live just go out on a hike in the woods, like all these have really cut into us and cut into or has added on to our disconnection to self and to nature. And so I think collectively, and like I said, I think collectively, especially the millennials, we're like, okay, this, like, we need change. Like, this is not working for us. And this next generation should not have to experience this either,
100%.
Yeah. So I'm hopeful, I really am. We'll just have to see how it rolls out with the federal legalization. Politicians, America is just so big. It's just such a big nation where, you can live in Tennessee and you have a whole different life if you're versus someone who's living in Colorado.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting seeing how some states are very forward thinking. And so those people might soon enough have a more, harmonious community esque life versus people who are under the jurisdictions of closed-minded politicians and governors and things like that. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this all rolls out. But I do have hope. I really do.
Yeah, me too. I think it's definitely changing.
Yes.
It's just, like I said, everybody has to do their part that knows the power of these things. Spread the word, as much as you can. Just talk about it. But don't be crazy. Don't be like a hippie, because then that just turns people off when it's too much. I think if we all just can tackle this aspect of our being in a way that's not too sensationalized, that's what we can learn from the 60s, what they did wrong, I guess, in a way. Is to like approach it from a way that is very human and very relatable to anybody that has no clue what a psychedelic really is. And I think it really just comes down to conversation. It really does. It just to be able to, maybe even if somebody's totally closed off, they could be like the Bible Belt, someone from Tennessee, you know what I mean? Like a Christian church going person. They don't even thought about psychedelics ever. I think it's just good to, even if you disagree with somebody and they're probably going to disagree, just maybe spark something. And there's plenty of research online too, which is great nowadays. It's like, if you really want to convince somebody, you just like, all right, look it up, man. Like the world's changing. Like it's not, we're at a point where yes, there are people where still backwards thinking, caught in the old paradigm, but I don't think the cat's out of the bag, like there's no going back now.
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
So
I agree.
that's where my hope lies as well. It was like, well, we opened Pandora's box of psychedelics. There's no way we're going to close it now. It may be slow and it may be not how we really want it at this point in time, but you can't stop it, man. Like the cat is out of the bag, which is good.
Yeah, I agree. We're at this point where it's just kind of forward from here, because there's too many powerful people that believe in it now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like too many powerful people who have a lot of money, who are investing in maps, who are providing the resources to do these trials. There's lawyers and doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and teachers and nurses, and so there's these prominent people in our society who are like, yeah, like I support this, I believe in it. And so and these are sophisticated people. It's incredible being able to pick up the phone, call a psychiatrist, and we talk about MDMA on a professional level. Like it's the funnest conversation, but we talk about it in such a concise way where it's just it's not like this hippy dippy whatever. It's like we know what we're talking about, and we're talking about it in a way where it's sophisticated, and I think that's how it should be. So I'm excited for the enthusiasm, for the changing of culture. Like I really do think we're on this cultural shift, which is long overdue. Long overdue. And I think we're at the cusp of that. I really do. And then that's the help with psychedelics, and that will just propel it further, forward, quicker. But we just want to do it in a way where it's honoring those who have been doing psychedelic work. Like we're obviously not the super pioneers. We didn't discover this. This isn't our idea. Doing it in a way where it's not like repeating colonization in a way, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot of discussions on that in the trainings I'm in and stuff, of doing it in a way where we are culturally sensitive, not just white people being trained to do this. We need non-white people to be trained as psychedelic therapists, and so that's just the fact that people who are part of this revolution, if you will, that's part of the conversation, is we're aware, like, okay, we cannot repeat this toxic, behavior of colonization within this realm. So we have to be very cognizant of being respectful for what came before us and everything, what we're doing. So huge leap, right?
Yeah.
Huge improvement. So I'm like honored to be a part of this. I am excited for this. I just feel so humbled and purposeful. And, I think the most important thing that any of us can do is doing our internal work. And that doesn't have to be with psychedelics. That doesn't mean that you automatically need psychedelics to do internal work. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the most important thing that anyone can do in terms of propelling this cultural shift forward is doing your internal work. Okay, like what are my biases? What are my traumas? What has been my lineage, right? Like what has been the generational trauma? What has been the trauma that I've been through on a personal level in my life?
That's scary though.
It is.
That's why. It's because it's fear that holds us back. We're just afraid of the skeletons in our closet.
Yeah.
But psychedelics allow you to open up the closet and see the skeletons and confront them. Or the internal work that you're talking about. What is your internal work? Like, do you have a practice that you do?
So I would say that, my internal work is a forever ongoing process. That's what I tell my clients, is my self-evolution is always ongoing, for the rest of my life. So I think I go off my mood. So I don't have a specific, like I could do this and this and this every day. I think what I do is, so my internal work, for one, just outwardly, I do things that are very holistic and good for my health. So I eat well. And I just know that doing these things that people are like, oh, like you do these things to like stay fit. I'm like, well, I do these things to keep my insides healthy, right? So I eat well, I exercise, I talk to trusted people in my life who I love very often. So that's my social support. I make sure to spend as much time in nature as possible. I read a lot, and I read books that are inspiring. I mean, I basically only read research books, but they're inspiring to me, so they make me feel good. And then I journal a ton. I do a lot of, I guess journaling is my biggest thing in terms of like my inner reflections. And I need to bring because I have a whole world in my brain. Like I think all the time. And so talking out loud to other people, as well as myself, as well as writing on paper, helps me sift through my internal world. And it's really cool because I also, especially the ones where I'm documenting it, like on paper, I get to reread those at some point, sometimes I do, but I kind of wait to do that sometimes. But, so those are all very meditative for me. Like cooking's very meditative, very creative process. Journaling is extremely meditative for me. I think that where I'm living at in Germany, I'm in this it's so cute. I'm in Kaiserslautern. So if anyone wants to look that up, it's like this bodunk, like a random place, southwest of part of Germany. But my specific neighborhood is so cute. Like I walk out of my door and there's a castle right above my place. It's from a castle from the 12th century.
Oh,
and
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's so magical. And then there's this huge mountain just full of trails. So I go almost every day where I just walk out of my door and go walking in this mountain. And it's so meditative. It's just pure magic. And it's just a simple walk, it's just a simple hike in the mountains. And that's a part of my internal work, is giving time to myself where I'm not on social media. I'm not watching a TV show. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm not doing anything per se. I'm walking, of course, but I'm not really doing anything. And so it's just my time to think and
disconnect.
Yeah.
Disconnect from connect. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Disconnect in a way and then connect in a whole different way.
Yes.
And I think as therapists, it's really essential that we do have, so I guess that is like, so I do have daily practices, but it's based on my mood. So I don't journal every day, but I journal a ton. And sometimes I don't get on a hike every day, but I hike as much as possible, so kind of just, life is life. And some days I have busy days and some days I'm not going outside. I don't feel like walking today, and that's okay.
Exactly.
I honor my mood. And if I don't feel like walking, then I'm not going to shame myself. I'm like, all right, Amanda, you're not going to walk today. That's fine.
Yeah.
So, the internal work is I think all a part of that all encapsulates all of it. And I think to kind of really boil it down is my internal work is honoring. So I kind of just tapped on it, like honoring what is coming up, like what I'm feeling and where I feel it in my body. That's really what I've been trying to practice more, is where I'm physically feeling whatever emotion that's coming up, and honoring it and approaching it with curiosity versus a judgment, right?
Ever do yoga?
Yeah. Okay. I knew I was missing something. I love yoga. I'm obsessed with it. Oh my gosh. I was like, there's something else that I'm not.
Well, yeah, yoga is a big part in
Huge.
going
It's
in.
Yes, and that's obviously that's there's so much truth there that's a practice that's been around for millennia.
Yep.
It's super meditative, and so I do yoga. I would say at least 4 times a week, and when I don't do it, I feel the difference.
Oh
Like
yeah,
that's
it's a
how.
medicine.
Yes, it is. And the specific way that you move your body, it like twists and I think it takes like certain toxins and certain energies out of your physical body. It's an incredible practice. So that's also part of my internal work. So
Hmm.
I basically am like stacked with like all these, internal work, coping mechanisms, coping skills. You can kind of call them all the same. Um, I have plenty of those and I
Hmm.
utilize them all the time and I honor what I want to fit what I need at that moment. So I don't have like this rigid structure where like I have to do this every day. And if I don't do it, I'm a bad person or I failed today. It's like, no, I don't put that pressure on myself. I just do what feels right. And
All your
so,
intuition.
yes, powerful thing, man. Our intuition is our biggest gift and our biggest tool.
Yeah, it's our
Um,
guide.
exactly. So I follow my intuition.
Hmm.
And so the internal work is ongoing forever, which I find very beautiful. I feel like I'm a very curious person. And so I just like the idea of, okay, like this is like a cool, like project, if you will, like, just always improving myself and improving my knowledge and my awareness and my perspective and just always growing is such a, um, yeah, I like approaching life that way, where you're
Hmm.
just hungry to grow and hungry to learn, and it makes life super fun and exciting and
Hmm.
eventful. And I'm talking about even the mundane things like going on a walk. Going on a walk is magical. I
Hmm.
mean, it really can be. Um, so yes, that I would say that was a long spiel on my internal work.
That was awesome, though. Yeah, I totally feel that. I'm 100% with you. And all of these things are everyone's own individual work. I think, at least for me, it gives me a sense of like purpose, and
Yeah.
it gives me a sense of like placement, alignment in this life. Because if you don't have that self care, that self love,
Hmm.
for me, it's like it's like, why am I living? Like, what am I doing? I'm just earning a paycheck. I go to sleep, I eat, I poop, and do the same thing, and just like this weird cycle. It's like, no, now that I know that that's just all those things of life that are still there, like the drama of life, the stuff we have to go through just to survive. That's just a byproduct. But what's really going on is the internal work behind the scenes, is that spiritual growth that you talked about. Like that's the purpose here in this
Yes.
life. And that's what we're all lacking. That's why everybody is so dissatisfied, because we live in a world that doesn't really tell us. I mean, it tells us our purpose, but it's not the right purpose. It's not aligned with the way, with the Tao, with the divine purpose, with God's purpose. If you want to go there, it's because we all have that purpose. We
Mhm.
just have to find it first, and then once you find it, you don't let go. It's just like it's something that you just can't lose sight of. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
that's what it does for me. I'm in the same situation as you. Like I love nature, do yoga.
Mhm.
Yeah, just internally explore. I say the same thing. It's like my life is just a continual meditation. People ask me, "Do you meditate every day?" I'm like, my whole life is a meditation, man.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, I never stop. Like everything that I do is meditative. I
Yeah,
agree. Uh-huh.
yeah, it's awesome, huh?
I love that. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just it makes me just be happier to be alive. It's interesting because it was getting back to the whole idea of psychedelics. It's kind of like these things. I haven't taken mushrooms in a long time, but
Yeah.
just that I know that I've had that experience leads the way. Like, do you think it's like it imprints something in your mind, like it changes the neurons in our brain to
Yes.
somehow like make connections that weren't there before, and then once the doing is done, you can't undo it, type of thing?
Yes, that's exactly what happens. It actually changes the brain chemistry and the neurons, and so it fires neurons that were either, really I don't want to say destroyed, but really changed through trauma, specifically. But yes, so it does create neuron pathways that previously weren't there. And, once that's kind of opened up, it's like, okay, it really opens up your brain, and therefore
Yeah.
your perspective and your thoughts and your attitude, and then therefore your behaviors, your decisions that you make, and so on and so forth. So yes, it actually does change our neurons. And so that's why it's like such a quick fix, and it's so efficient and happens so, it can happen in one day.
Hmm.
uh, because through talk therapy, um, I can't do that in talk therapy, not that,
Do what?
not that deeply. I think the best form of talk therapy that's the closest to that is internal family systems. It's called IFS. I've been researching that like crazy the past few months. And that's the best talk therapy modality that can get us to that space where, it changes our neurons. But it's obviously a lot longer process because it's done through dialogue and not through medicine.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is what happens. It does change our neurons. And so, going back to what you mentioned about living in this world, is like we're so focused on external things, and um that's just exactly what we shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And it's very, I have clients where it's very difficult for them to even begin going inward because they're like, I've never done this before. I've never thought about where I feel my emotions in my body. Like, what is that even like? And so, like you said, even earlier, how people are scared of going inward. I get that, that it is scary. It is, I think it's been taught to be kind of scary. In reality, it's not, but I think on the surface level, it can be seen as scary.
Yeah.
Um, but trying to just at least maybe just change people's perspective into one of curiosity, like why, like, and turn your curiosity into that fear. Like, okay, well, why am I fearful about going inward? What does that mean? Like, where did that came from?
Hmm.
What,
I think it's just conditioning.
yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Because if we were kids and taught to do this stuff as kids, I don't think we'd live in a totally different world, totally different paradigm. But it's just, we were never even exposed to that. So we're
Exactly.
just like, we are beings that grew into beings that we weren't supposed to be like that. Like the current paradigm we're living under is just, it's like corruption, corruption of the mind. And
Mm-hmm.
this whole process we're talking about, internal work, psychedelics, whatever your internal work is it's a form of deconditioning.
Yes.
And it's a tough process. It really is, but it's what we have to do. And
Yeah.
it can seem definitely scary because it's conditioning. It's the ego. It's conditioning to identify as the ego.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think you're the ego, you're essentially killing yourself in a way. I know that sounds like a little savage, but like that's the whole meaning behind ego death. Is like we have to, not necessarily kill ourselves, but it's like disconnect and see ourselves more. And once you kill the ego, you see that you are greater than just this being. And that's the whole process. That's what we have to go through right now. And yeah, that can be scary. I definitely understand why.
Yeah. And I like how you said where, I think if we were taught this as kids, like just the simple act of meditation or just yoga, like if that was embedded into our schooling and education from, as young as kindergarten, just implementing that alone, I think would be completely revolutionary.
Hmm.
Uh, because I'm a really big critic of a lot of systems in America, and one of them is our education system, because I've been working in high schools and middle schools, and I'm like, wow, these are, it's just really dysfunctional, and it
Yeah.
just, we're not educating. It's like we're not teaching them what they should be taught.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that's a part of this, in due time, with this cultural shift we're going through, is we change and revolutionize our education system, with what we teach the next generation, so that they don't continue down this consumerism, capitalistic, this super competitive, I have to win, it's me versus you. I'm just so sick of that mentality. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so tired of it. And
yeah, you're not alone.
yeah, yeah. So it would be great to raise a generation in due time that where that's not the focus, and that's not like a value that we teach them, and we instead teach them community and cooperation and loving yourself and understanding your inner world and learning how to communicate. Like, gosh, it would be really nice if people learned how to communicate. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that need to be changed, and they all intertwine. It's a system, right? And there's a bunch of little subsystems. And so if you're changing one part, it's going to change the whole part. And so I think that eventually, the other subsystems will change as the therapeutic industry changes. But we'll see, how that unfolds, how quickly, how slowly. But like we said, nonetheless, I'm very hopeful and I'm very excited because it is changing. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, like the Pandora's box is open and
there's no going back.
There's no going back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's all up to us though. It really is. Everybody listening, me and you, it's up to all of us to do our work, to make sure, because that's what our purpose is here. It's to ensure a better situation for future generations, because we're not going to change everybody in this generation. There's, human beings are can be very close-minded. So it's not, there's not going to be like mushrooms become legal and the whole world changes. Timothy Leary actually said this, like, I don't know where he came up with it, but social change takes two generations. Oh. So let's look back 2 generations in the 60s. What are we doing now? We're 2 generations from the 60s, and we're instituting the change that they wanted to start. So if we fast forward 2 generations from us, we're going to pretty much live in a completely different paradigm. Hopefully, ideally, I'm not making any guarantees, but I think that's our job here, is to start the change and start the revolution. And, it sounds corny and sounds weird, but like, it's true, man. This is actually what we're doing. We are quite literally changing the world and how we see the world. And it's a beautiful time to be alive. I always say this, it's like, if we do have multiple incarnations, if you believe in multiple lives, this one right now has to be my favorite incarnation, man. This is like the time of change, like if I was born in 1440 and I lived till 1480, what was that life? It probably wasn't too interesting, right? But this one is way better than anything I could probably ever imagine in the past. Like, this is a time unprecedented in human history over the thousands. I don't know how long humans have been around, 200,000 years, I guess, maybe even more, over all that millennia. This time just seems so, maybe I'm a little biased. Maybe it's my ego talking. I'm a little biased, but it seems so significant to where we are going as a whole entire species, as a spiritual species. Like, it just seems like this is what everything has been leading up to. And it's this current moment that we're in. It's amazing. And like I said, it might be my ego talking on that. It might be a little bit biased, but I don't think so. I think this is the time. Like, this is really, people will look back at all of our work that we're doing here and thank us. Be like, wow, you guys paved the way for us to have a better world. When I guess we can say that for the previous generations, like the hippies in the 60s, but we can't really say that as a society. We can't really say thank you for what you've provided us, because we're still living in the remnants of the drug war. So our job is to make it so the future generation is not embarrassed by our actions that we took while we are here, while we're still living, while we're still breathing. Beautiful time. It's unprecedented. Like I said, there's no other time that I can imagine, at least in human history, where there's this much change, there's this much I guess, awakening. I guess there's just, it is the awakening. You know, people say it, they dub it as like, this is the grand awakening, the great reset, or whatever word you want to put on it. Like, it is, man. Like, it seems cliche, but it's not an accident that we're having this conversation. Like, it's not an accident that other people are relating to the conversation and able to like go on Reddit or other forums and communicate and share our experiences. And that also goes along with the internet. Like, the internet is playing a huge part into our change. It's our interconnectivity to share these ideas like never before. Mm-hmm. Like if we get rid of the whole idea of doing yoga, meditation, internal work, and then flip the coin also on the aspect of what the internet is, it's like, what? That also makes it so like this time is incredibly amazing to be alive. Like, there's no other time in human history where I could have communicated with you like we're doing right now. This is amazing. This is magic. Yeah. I don't like, you're thousands of miles away in a totally different country. Mm-hmm. And we're having this conversation like we're in the same room, sharing these ideas that need to be said. So this is it. This is why it fills me with hope, because when you really step back and reflect on what our life is and what we're doing here, and kind of disconnect yourself from the paradigm of the news and whatever's going on in the world, you see like how wonderful and amazing, and how this life is truly a gift and a once in a lifetime opportunity to be a part of. And that is the opportunity for human beings to fully awaken and internalize what it means to be a human being, to be alive. That's never been done before, really. I mean, there's probably been certain ascended masters and individuals here and there in certain cultures and society. And, you know, we all know the names of them, or we don't. There's definitely been people that have become self-realized over time. But now it's like the whole world is becoming self-realized. Like, that's huge. We are transitioning into, metamorphosizing into this other being, and it's happening right before our eyes, and nobody's talking about it. It's just like, how about the Super Bowl? How about, you know, like it's raining out today though. It's like, bro, don't you know what's going on? Like, people are like we're, and it's like it gets me emotional, as you can see. It gets me like kind of almost a little agitated. It's like, come on, like, don't you people realize like what is really going on like right now at this very second? But then I realize, I'm like, you know what? It's just this change that I've talked about, this whole paradigm shift, it starts internally. And there's nothing that I could ever say. There's nothing that anyone could ever read. Anything that comes from the outside world that could do it for somebody. It really just comes down to this entire collective change starts with a internal change of a direct experience, whatever it is. It could be a psychedelic, could be Kundalini yoga, could be journaling, whatever it is, whatever, you know, get you going and get you connected. That's what you have to do. But it's not something that I could ever do. And I have to always kind of disconnect myself and say, all right, look, I have to like, because I'm really passionate about it, you know, like personally, I'm passionate about trying to wake somebody up, as cliche as that sounds. Like, I want them to feel how I feel, because I feel as though that all of this stuff we just talked about in our conversation, ultimately, putting it simply, makes me a happier person. Like, it gives me just a will to be alive. Just what more do you want than that? You know, like, because I come from darkness too. Like, I come from a point where I was having suicidal ideations in myself, and just like kind of just not seeing the light in this life, and like no point. I was just like, there's just like, why am I here? So this whole paradigm shift is about us finding our purpose, and nothing more beautiful than that. It's an internal thing. It starts internally, but it's like I said, it's if we all can get on that paradigm, then we are quite almost literally living on that heaven on earth that all of these stories have talked about. Like, that's what we're in the midst of creating right now. But the kingdom of heaven is within, and that's where it starts. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about that.
Yeah, I love that so much, and I totally align with that. I agree with that. I think that's wonderful. That's just
Yeah,
spectacular. I that perspective is so,
it's hope.
yes, and it's just, it's optimistic, but it's also realistic.
Hmm.
It's what we're seeing and observing, and I think it's beautiful too. And it's definitely a hell of a time to be alive.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
crazy, unprecedented, revolutionary. We've never lived in a world like this, and so I really appreciate that you say that, and you are saying this on a thing that's going to be broadcasted, because people need to hear that. Because I have a lot of people in my life who are who say that they're like mad that they're alive at this time. And
Mm.
so I like how you say it. You're like this is crazy. This is like just crazy magical. Like this is
Yeah.
historical. This is a just absolute paradigm shifting, going to this new realm that I think we're supposed to be going in, which is being more awakened and being more aware of ourselves and what will unfold through that. So thank you for sharing that. I really find that very beautiful.
Well, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
What I mean, what do you think the world's going to look like in 20, 30 years? Are we going to have these medicines fully integrated? Are there going to be like meditation? Is that going to be like a regular thing? Like everyone's just going to be talking about it. Like it's kind of like becoming the cool thing right now. You know what I mean? To be spiritual, and almost kind of like that new age spirituality. But do you think it's just kind of going to be part of our being, like it should be, like as it should be?
Good question. So I think I'll go off of what Rick Doblin says. So he's the founder and CEO of MAPS. And if people don't know what MAPS is, it stands for Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. They're located in Colorado, and they have places in, I believe it's Santa Cruz as well in California. So from what he says, and I very much respect him, obviously, and have heard and read a lot of what he's written and said. And so his vision and his idea is that, yes, in as little as 10 years, he's hoping that there will be psychedelic centers where
I believe.
where anyone can walk in and maybe like have their choice of if it's MDMA or marijuana or psilocybin or LSD. They can go in and have a journey, have a really healthy set and setting with a professional, right? So with a therapist, because that's excruciatingly important. It's not just willy-nilly, the therapist is a fundamental aspect as to why these are so transformational. So he's envisioning that, yes, there will be psychedelic centers around where people can go in, where you don't need like a specific prescription, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest things that I love about psychedelic assisted therapy is that it flips the whole structure on its head, where right now, psychiatrists prescribe, Zoloft or whatever, you name it, for like 60 days. Okay, here you go. Here's the bottle. I'm trusting you to take it how I'm telling you to take it, but have as you will,
Mm-hmm.
give it to whoever, but I'm trusting you that you won't give it to anyone else, right? I'm trusting that you don't abuse it in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So psychedelic assisted therapy flips that completely on its head, where I administer, like the provider gives it to you right then and there, and you take it right then and there. And that's it. You don't take anything home. There's no realm of abuse going on. And even then, it's been proven that psychedelics are not addictive. They're just not. Methamphetamine and these other drugs that we have, who are given as little as children as 2 years old, those are very addictive.
We give meth to our kids.
We give meth to our children, and no one bats an eye. No one says,
But don't touch that marijuana, y'all. Do not touch that.
Right. Don't touch the leaf though. But meth, that's fine. Yeah.
It's devil's lettuce. Do not touch that.
That's deliberate. That's all very, very much by design, how our system
Dollar
does,
signs.
right? And so that's how I, going off of Rick Doblin, that's how I envision is, and he says, he's like, in a decade, he's like, I want to see this in a decade where there's these centers where they have professionals there. And it's because like you said, you haven't done mushrooms in a while. Because sometimes people, like I had this friend, we did LSD together, and it was his first time doing a psychedelic, and he was like, had a wonderful experience, and he's like, I'm good for like years, he's like, he's like, I'll probably do this again, but he's like, I don't need to do this for years, and some people maybe need it every 6 months, or so it's just, you get to determine what you would need at that point. And nonetheless, it's not this prescription where we give it to you and you just have at it, so it's a very sophisticated, very safe, very just total shift in approaching mental health that I think is so much better and so much just structured in a way that just makes sense to me. So yes, I feel like it will be. And, from what I said earlier, I think that will depend on, so I think California, Colorado, Oregon, it'll be more prominent there versus maybe like Oklahoma, West Virginia, I think, so maybe in due time, it'll be all over the US, but it'll be a little bit different based on where we live in the United States, just because it's such a huge nation. But I do think that it will be the norm at some point. And we're going to break down all these walls of taboo and judgment and really just miseducation about it, and be fully immersed with it. And this is these thoughts and ideas are obviously inspired by Rick Doblin, and I really do believe in his vision. And so it might be, 10 years is not a long time. It's not a long time at all.
It's really not.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I like, think about what that would mean for our world, like not just like what it would mean for America. And obviously America has a massive influence on the world, which is always so funny to me, why we have such an influence over the world. But it can be literally world changing, in that aspect. So it's, like you said, I'm happy to be alive right now. I'm happy to be a part of this. I'm honored. Like, I am deeply honored, and I feel so blessed and so lucky to just have walked into this organically and to be at this juncture and alive right now. It's just crazy cool. It's crazy cool. So that's what I envision. Yeah.
Some people say that our souls chose this.
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't know.
Right.
What do you so when you open up your ketamine clinic, could you take us through like the process of, say I'm a patient and I come in and I say, oh, I'm going through some shit. Can you, like, what do you actually do with this patient? Like, what are these clinics going to look like ideally? Like, what is this whole practice going to look like?
Yeah, good question. So I wish I would have gone through my notes before you asked that question. It's a very, very valuable question. So there is a process where you have to kind of like qualify, because I'll have a client coming in, it's not like, okay, everyone's going to get ketamine. And that's not what it is. You have to have certain, I guess you have to meet a certain criteria of safety, physically, as well as I think your environment. And there is a protocol. And like I said, I've done two trainings with Polaris Insight Center, and the last one wasn't, it was all the way back in June. So honestly, I don't want to misspeak because I haven't taken a look at those notes in a while. And I'm doing level 3 and level 4 in a couple weeks, and I was gonna review them next week. So off the top of my head, that's, I think, the most I can speak about it at this time, because my brain has been smashed with, with a lot of other information since then.
I feel
But there is a protocol, there is a sequence of what to do, and so it's not like everyone coming into my practice is going to get ketamine. And
yeah, it's not a ketamine dispensary.
No, not at all. And it's also, I'm not even going to call it a ketamine center. It's going to be a therapeutic center, and some people will be administered ketamine.
Oh, okay. So it's just a therapy center, but if you want it, it's kind of there.
Yeah. If you come in and you basically kind of qualify, where we believe, because it's a cooperative or collaborative experience, if we both think that ketamine is something you can benefit from, then we can do it. But it's not like it's going to be a ketamine therapy center. It's going to be just a therapeutic center, and then I'll be able to provide ketamine if I feel like a client would benefit from it. So yeah, it's not going to be like a full-on ketamine center, but yeah, so that's, and so ketamine is administered in front of me with the client, but there is like protocol. So like the training I'm going through, they do provide all of that. They provide what they go through with the process of, we basically call it screening a client. So screening to make sure that we hit all the ducks, we make sure that they're safe, that their body physically, they can do it, if they're on other medications, so there's a lot of steps to go through to screen them, to make sure that it's appropriate and it's safe. But I think that's the most detailed I can go, because I haven't reviewed it in a little while.
That's fine. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's not just everybody's going to be able to walk in and be like, hey, give me some ketamine.
Definitely not. No, that's not how it works. So no, it's not like ED pills. It's not like that. That's how I feel like ED pills have been, like, oh, I can't focus. Oh, here's Adderall, here's Zoxin, and here's, so it's not, it's completely, it's a much more responsible approach. And it's not, the way that I've observed psychiatry and pharmaceuticals, it's very profit driven. Yep. This is not that, ketamine assisted therapy is not super, it's not super affordable at this time, but it's also not profit driven. The people who are doing this, and specifically my trainers at Polaris, they're so, like, that's just not their MO. Like, they are doing this to heal, like true deep seated healing, and they truly believe in these medicines to help people have a more healthier life.
Yeah. And then compassion driven.
Yeah. Yes. So it's just weird for you even to think about, wow, like I'm gonna be doing that later this year. I'm a little, just full transparency, I'm a little nervous, because it's like a responsibility on me, doing that. But I just feel like it's so, I have to, like, I need to do this. This is just so important. And I have put myself to be in this position to take on this responsibility. And like I said many times, I'm honored to do so. So I'm doing those 2 trainings, later this month. So I'll have I'll have a full rundown at that point, but it's exciting. So yeah, that's a short little synopsis of what it kind of looks like. So very, very different from what the current structure is.
Yeah. Like I said, it's more towards like actual compassion. It seems like actually developing some kind of relationship with the client. I don't know if the client is the right word, the patient.
You say the client. Yeah.
It seems like that is a lot healthier approach to how we heal ourselves.
Yes, because the therapeutic process is contingent on the relationship with the therapist and the client. That is the most important aspect of therapy is the rapport and the trust there and the connection. And so that 100% would influence if you're getting ketamine administered to you, you know, it's contingent on that process. So, you know, because there's therapists out there who aren't very good, you know, I've had them as therapists, right? But that's why, you know, there's a bunch of therapists out there, and that's why it's so important to have a therapist where you feel like they genuinely care about you, because we're there. I mean, you know, it takes a very, I think, specific desire and specific characteristics to walk into the life of being a therapist. And so a lot of us are obviously here because we just truly, genuinely want to help you, and we're honored to do so. And it's just a beautiful profession. Yeah, I can't wait to be in private practice. I can't wait. It's gonna be so nice not to have a boss. I can stay and do whatever I please, and I will be like, oh my gosh, will I get fired because they'll say something that I said something or whatever. I'm very excited to have full range just to speak with my clients how I want to speak, because, you know, working in the military, I can't do that. You know, I can't. I have to
watch what you say.
Yeah, I have to, you know, which, you know, I can kind of feel it out. Some adults, obviously, that I've seen over the years, military adults, they can go into conversations with me because I can tell their mindset and their thought process. But other than that, you know, I got to keep it pretty contained. So I'm excited to have the full freedom to say, please.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm excited too. It's a whole new one.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, I have hope, you know, this, because you're not alone. There's probably other people that are in your position, right, that have the same idea as you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yes.
What a time, huh?
Yes, it is quite the time. It's quite the time. So, you know, thank you for doing this, like having this platform, having these discussions. It's, you know, we need you. You know, this is a collective effort. You know, it doesn't just take clinicians and therapists to do this. It takes everyone from a bunch of different disciplines, from a bunch of different countries, you know, all different cultures, different ages. Like, it takes all of us collectively to push this forward, because we all benefit, you know, like we're benefiting by pushing this forward, because this helps us and everyone, right? We were all connected here. So it's just so motivating, you know, it's just so
really
motivating to do this. So thank you for having this platform, and thanks for having me on. This has been so fun. I love these conversations so much. I could talk about this for hours.
I feel your passion for it. Yes. I mean, I'm in the same boat as well. But yeah, I thank you for coming on. I mean, this podcast, like I said in the email, is only as good as the guest. So yeah, it's an entire collective effort that, everybody's good at their own thing. You know, I'm not a therapist, and you're not a podcast host yet. You know, I think you should start one, or start some kind of platform to be able to talk about it. But that's up to you. You know, you got a lot of work and your own stuff going on, so maybe worry about that when the time's right. But we're all we all have a part to play in this paradigm shifting time that we seem to find ourselves in. And whatever it is that you're good at, you just kind of have to go in and find that. You know, everybody has their own knack, their own thing that they do. Some people might be like painting psychedelic pictures, like Alex Gray. Like his work is insane.
You know? And his wife as well. Oh my gosh, they're amazing. Oh gosh, yes.
So you just got to find your niche, find whatever it is to better the collective, the collective for humanity. You know, just to create a better world. It starts with going in, finding out what you are, who you are, and then from there we act. It's that selfless action. And it seems like a daunting task. Like, oh, what do you mean? Oh, it feels like you might think that the whole world's on your shoulders, and you have to like, oh shit, what do you mean? Like I have to actually do something? But that it's not like going against the grain. It's actually like that's going with the grain. You realize that we are here. That is our job here, to serve that greater purpose, to do what we can do to create that better generation. And then they follow that same snowball effect. But yeah, whatever it is, you just got to go within. And thank you for coming on. This was an amazing conversation, Amanda. Would love to do it again, maybe sometime when you got your practice set up and, when we're at different points in our life, but you got good energy, seem like a really good person. So you're always welcome back on.
Awesome. And I was going to say, I love that. I love that you said that. Cause I was like, man, like, I know that I want to come back on again. Cause I already know, like, I was like, I'm going to love this process so much. And I was like, I should come back on when I'm, fully established in my practice. And I've been doing ketamine assisted psychotherapy for a few months. So let's keep in touch and let's plan on that. Cause I would love to go fully into detail as to what that is. And I know that there's a lot of younger people who are wanting to go into psychology with the idea or with the goal of becoming a psychedelic therapist, where that's like, they're like 18, 19, and they're like, I already know that I want to be this. So I would love to talk about that process at a further podcast. And yes, so thank you. Thank you so much. I would love to come on again. And this has been so fun. And I'm honored to be here. And let's definitely keep in touch. And I would love to be a guest again. That sounds great.
Definitely. You're one of the good ones. Hope all is well in the meantime. But yeah, like I said, we'll be in touch. And good luck with your future endeavors. You said around May is when it's going to open.
So I will be moving back to San Diego in June, and I'm hoping it'll be opening up in July of 2021. Okay. So a few months, which doesn't, it's really not that far away at this point. I feel like time is going by so fast. So July is when I'm shooting to have it up and running.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. It's going to be a good summer.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Perfect. Well, thank you, and have a great day, and we'll keep in touch.
You as well. Peace out.
Bye.